and his hands were like bleeding because it was just slicing his hands. He's like, Joe, I can't do this anymore, man. My hands are gone. And he was like a big, tough guy as well.
G'day, I'm Kama.
And I'm Blowy.
It's the Kama and Blowy Show.
Kama and Blowy, Kama and Blowy, walking and talking. Kama and Blowy, Kama and Blowy.
Good morning, David Kama Stewart.
Good morning, Blosef Blowy Stewart.
You know that you, in particular, have lots of nicknames.
I know I do.
They're not really official, but you do have tons of them. And what we used to call you Sean, and I believe did Sean come from Sean Kemp?
That's right. The basketball player, Kama.
Kama, yeah.
Kamikaze is one of the biggest ones that basically is almost like a root nickname, and then there's branches off that. There's a lot of them. So Camo, of course, and Kama, and Cameron sometimes some people call me.
Cameron, yeah, that's a good one.
Sean Camp, David Campese.
The list
is long.
The list goes on. And what I've got, I don't really have as many. I'm like Broseph, Blowy, Blowfish.
At my different workplaces, I've got different nicknames. Like at ABC, they called me Nintendo because there's a Nintendo DS thing, and DS David Stewart.
Nice, well played.
Yeah. The catering kitchen I used to work at, they called me Bobby Boucher. おはようございます。ありがとうございます。まだ5週間ぐらい、5週間前ぐらい生まれました。
しっかりしてやる。
はい、ありがとうございます。はい、今まですごいずっと泣いてたんですけど、ちょっとこの中に入ると安心します。落ち着く。
やっぱり気持ちがいいんでしょうね。
はい。はい。
僕ちゃんですか？
僕
ちゃんですか？
はい、そうです。はい。
いや、
ありがとうございます。
すみません、お忙しい。
いえいえ、失礼します。
So Kama, for the non-Japanese speakers out there, can you explain what just happened?
Yeah, so this is the thing. We just, I'm walking with my son Rudy today. He's 5 weeks old. And we've just walked past somebody on the street who stopped to have a look at him and say how cute he was and ask if he was a boy. And yeah, you get that a fair bit. And I just explained before we actually started this recording, he was bawling his eyes out. But the moment he got in the pram and outside, he just calmed right down. So I've actually got the GoPros attached to the pram today. So unfortunately it's kind of pointing up and you won't see as much background, but I think with today's subject, you're going to be doing the majority of the talking today, because I wanted to talk to you about your time living on the tropical island of Hamilton Island in northern Queensland.
Yeah, well, for those of you who don't know Hamilton Island, it's part of the Whitsundays Island group, which is part of the Great Barrier Reef. Well, it's not actually on the Great Barrier Reef, but it's the islands that are near the Great Barrier Reef. So you can, they basically call it the Great Barrier Reef anyway. And Hamilton Island is the biggest island, as in population, and there's the most hotels and shops and stuff there, and it's even got an airport, which was quite a decent size airport. I believe it did the two carriers, Qantas and Virgin, I believe. And so what happened was I got back from Japan and I was looking for work as a graphic designer, and I talked about this a little bit, but
Episode 9 or 8 or something, I think.
Yeah, that's right. And I talked a little bit about it, but basically there was no work where I was living, so I had to look elsewhere and look for any type of work. And I found some work in Hamilton Island, and the original job was to be a porter, so the person that just picks up the bags and brings them to the people. That was my original role, and I thought, look, if I'm living on a tropical island, what can be bad about that? And so I had a car, I had a van, and I drove it all the way up from Brisbane.
Just going back a sec, how did you actually find the job? Was it through a friend or was it advertised?
No, news. Back in those days, we had these things called newspapers, and newspapers are like lots of pieces of paper that have text on it, and they fold up into like a book type of thing, but it's all floppy. There's no hard bit, and people used to use these newspapers as a way of news. And people would read them, and they're quite interesting things. You should look them up if you've got time.
Thanks.
Yeah, no worries. And so anyway, it was in the newspaper, and I thought it was a bit dodgy at the start because I'd actually gone to a few dodgy job interviews. There was this one that I went to that was a job for karate, and they would give you karate training, but you had to, and I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. I get to do karate and get paid for it. But the catch was that you had to go around door to door selling these karate packages to people.
And commission only, was it?
Yeah, commission only, and yeah, so I'm like, nah, I think I'll pass on that.
I was looking for some work once and I saw it was on a telegraph pole, there was a notice saying something like, oh, workers needed quick, easy cash kind of thing. And I called the number and they wouldn't give me any information. They said, I'll come in tomorrow to the other side of town and we've got an information session. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I went in there and they it wasn't just an information session, it was basically the first day of work, and they were training you to sell these knives. And but the thing is, it was basic normal network marketing where they make it look like a game. Oh, let's see how many of you can, all the people you know in this area, see who can get the most, and there's a prize for the person who writes down the most names. Then of course, 5 minutes later they think, okay, now you've already got your list of names of people who you can contact to do your practice work on. And they knew that lots of these people would probably feel sorry for these kids who have probably been trying to get a job for ages and their parents have been on their back. And they're, oh, good on you, Johnny's, I don't really need this new knife set, but yeah, I'll do it for Johnny. But anyway, I stayed there for 3 days and I said, no, I just want some simple work. And I didn't really appreciate that the opacity there as well. I'd rather just be transparent what the job is and yeah, tell me from the start basically.
Yeah, exactly. And there was another job interview that I went to like that as well, which basically it was in the city in a big high-rise building. It was an amazing view. They like wowed everyone. And I went there and they it was selling stuff over, and they basically what they do is they ship you out to the other side of the country. So you're dependent on them and you're in a contract, and so they have a certain amount of time, so they just ship you out when you've got no money. They give you accommodation and everything, and you just work your ass off for them, trying door to door. And they said, basically, everyone's got the job. Whoever calls me back has got a job, basically. And I'm like, nah, I don't think I'll be calling you back.
No, but you did call this Hamilton job offer people back.
I did, and I had an on the phone interview, and they liked me, and so it was basically, yeah, come up, you've got a job. And I think my Japanese skills were good. They liked that, and also I'd been working in like restaurants and stuff like that, so I had a bit of hospitality industry experience, which was definitely good. So I packed up my stuff, and you still there, Kama?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I think I've lost.
Don't tell me it's on mute again.
Yeah, I can hear you. No, it's not
you
on
can
mute.
hear me? Okay.
It just went beep beep, and,
No. Oh,
and it wasn't the Roadrunner beep beep.
No.
So anyway, I packed up my stuff, had a van. I put everything in there, even my television.
Yeah, really?
What's interesting?
That you took a television with you?
Yeah, and it was a big television because back in those days it was a big CRT pitch tube televisions, but I'd purchased it and I was pretty proud of it. And I took my Xbox and I took my stereo, which was like a big one as well. And because I had a van, so I just put it all in there. Took my surfboard and...
What was your accommodation situation like in Hamilton Island?
When I got there, you're in like a dormitory type of thing. So you've got a roommate and you've got there's a bathroom, but it's shared with the unit next to you. So there's a double door there. So
Okay.
when you get in, you got to lock the other door so they don't come in, and you got to lock 2 doors and then have a shared shower. And then there's a communal kitchen, where you'd cook. But a lot of people wouldn't cook there.
Yeah.
But I was saving up, so I was. But yeah, it was. So when I started at the Hamilton Island working for them, the main resort there, and you had a lot of restrictions. Like you weren't allowed to swim in the swimming pools, and it wasn't as cool as it sounded, and the pay wasn't that great either.
Yeah.
And it was good fun, but I worked there for about a week, and then I got a new job on the island. I got a job with the aviation. So once they found out I could speak Japanese, they said, "Oh, come work for us." So it was Hamilton Island Aviation, and they do like the small planes, and they have helicopters, and they go out to the reefs, and they do tours, and also just normal flights over to the mainland and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, cool. And so...
Did you get a pay rise?
Oh, a little bit. I was on 30K a year then.
Oh, that's not too bad.
I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was doing that, and I'll tell you what my week was like.
Yeah.
I'd work 4 days on and then have 3 days off. And you'd start early in the morning and then finish around 5 or something like that. So one day I'd be on the island, just when people would arrive, I'd get the golf cart and take them to their hotel and drop them off. That was fun.
Mainly Japanese guests?
Yeah, mainly Japanese guests. And I would also just do work around the office and prepare stuff for the tours and stuff like that. So that was pretty easy. Just getting a bit of wind here. I'll cover the mic so it doesn't get blown out. And another day, day 2 would be I would fly out on the seaplane.
Yep.
So we had a few Cessna seaplanes. And would fly out to, there's an island called, it's Whitehaven, and it's one of the best beaches in the world. I think it's in the top 10 beaches of the world, and look it up, definitely look it up, Whitehaven Beach. It's amazing. It's like the whitest sand you've ever seen, the bluest water, and they would drop me off there like at 8 o'clock in the morning, and there'd be no one on the entire island, and I'd be the only one there, and I'd set up a couple of tents.
Yep.
And I'd have a few eskies, and then I'd just wait there for like an hour or so till the guests arrived.
Did that feel strange being the only person on this remote island?
No, it was awesome.
You never felt like, what if the weather suddenly changes and they can't come out here, I'm stuck out here?
Look, we were pretty careful with the weather.
Yeah.
Like being seaplane pilots,
Yeah.
they had to look really carefully at the weather. So if the weather was starting to change, they would leave straight away.
Yeah, okay.
I had a lot of trust in these guys that were flying. So
Yeah.
and yeah, so it was pretty cool. And I'd just sit there and read. I was studying Japanese, like mangas, I'd read the Doraemon
Yeah.
on the beach, just sit there and just, yeah, it was awesome. And then the guests would come, and all I'd have to do is give them some champagne and some fresh fruit, and we had these picnics, these gourmet sandwiches, and I'd give them, and I'd get my own as well. And then I'd go for a swim with them, and I'd take photos of them and just talk to them, and then let them have their free time. And then I'd help them get onto the plane, and then the next guest would come, and that would be a day. And then in the afternoon, I'd jump back on the seaplane, fly back home.
So there were 2 lots of guests today, were there?
Oh, no, probably about 5.
Okay.
Yeah, so they'd be there for it'd be in about an hour. So the pilot would stay there as well when the guests were there. So the pilot would just talk to me and would eat fruit or something like that. And then they'd take the guests back, and then I'd wait on the island for another hour for the next guest to come. And it'll just be that all day.
Yeah.
So, look, it was pretty cool. It's not something you'd want to do for your whole life,
No.
but for a small amount of time, it was good. But that was just one day of the week. And then the next day of the week, I'd be going out to Reefland, which is it's a pontoon, a floating pontoon, which is in the middle of the Great Barrier Reef. And I don't know if you've heard of the famous heart reef. It's in the shape of a heart.
Yeah.
So if you Google that as well, it'll come up. But yeah, it's a pretty iconic reef, which is in the Whitsunday. So we would get a catamaran boat, like a big boat, which would go out in the mornings. And on the way out, my job was to sell joy flights. So it was like $79 for one person, and you would just fly around that area and then for 10 minutes. So my job was to sell that, and it was a pretty easy gig because
Were you being reactive or were you being proactive?
I was the best salesman there.
Really?
Yeah. People, Joe, how do you sell so many? And so I just try.
Give me an idea of what your pitch was like. I'm walking past the booth.
I'd just start chatting to them first, like, oh, how's it going? You're loving the Great Barrier Reef type of thing? Yep. And I said, oh, so you're heading out to Reefland, have you seen it from above yet? Did you see it when you flew in? And they go, oh, no. I said, oh, well, the best way to see it is from the air, and the best way to get up there is a helicopter, which we got over on Reef World. So it's only $79, this is your only chance.
Yeah.
It's not that much money. And it's just like, people would go, oh yeah, that's not that much, is it? My only chance. I'm not gonna get this chance again. Oh, get the best photos.
He's right.
He's right, exactly. And so I would get sick on the boat, right? So I had to sell them really quick.
Yeah.
And then I remember one day, I was just so sick. I was laying on the ground. I was going green. And then some guest came up and goes, look at this dickhead. You shouldn't be working on here if you're getting seasick. I'm like, mate, I work for the aviation. That was my excuse. And then I would, the helicopter at the end of the day would fly all the way back to Hamilton Island. And, but I had to sell those tickets as well. So fill up the helicopter, and because an empty helicopter flying back's not good for business.
No.
I would sell all those tickets to come back, but sometimes there'd be a spare seat and I'd be allowed to come on the plane and fly back, so I wouldn't get seasick. And I could discount those tickets. Like there was no, like it's better to have someone paying $100 than no one at all. So the price for the return trip was like, it was quite expensive, like $300 or something like that per person. So I'd usually sell them, but I'd always have a full helicopter coming back because I knew that, it's better to have people on there than no one at all. And I'd try and sell it for more expensive, but then at the end of the day, if it's getting close and we have to get the people, it'd be like, Yep, all right. I remember the people who were talking to me. And I go up to them and say, mate, I've got a discount for you. You want to jump on for $200? And they go, oh, yeah. And they'd bring the whole family.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was another day on the island. And then, what's that? That's 3 days. And then the fourth day, I think the fourth day would be a repeat of one of those days.
Would they have other staff as well and you'd be kind of rotating?
That's right. There was like four of us or something like that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and who all spoke Japanese. And it was pretty cool because they had like a bar section which had a big beer fridge, and we'd just go have drinks after work down at the airport. And we were it was a good team because we always used to socialise together. And we were quite close with the pilots. And one day, well, we used to go wakeboarding. So the pilots had, one of the pilots had a speedboat, and they had all the wakeboard gear. So we'd go wakeboarding, and they would get like the jet fuel from the airport and fill up their speedboat with that.
Yeah.
Which was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And I remember the smell, the distinct smell of the jet fuel. But yeah, one day we were wakeboarding, and the pilot's like, oh, I've got to show you something, Joe. This is amazing. And he took me to the end of the airport, because the airport was right there, the runway. It was a short one.
Yep.
And the planes had to take off. And he goes, all right, what you do is, there's a big jumbo jet coming in. We could see it coming in.
Yeah.
So he pulled me up to the area which was the end of the where it was launching. Actually, it was taking off, and he sat me there.
You're in the boat?
I'm on the wakeboard.
Oh, okay.
And he's in the boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the wakeboard floating in the water, and he goes, oh, what happens is the jets make a wake, and then I take off, and it gives you an extra push. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, this sounds good. And so this massive jumbo jet comes along, and it's like roaring so loud, and it takes off, and it just sprays all this dirt and shit in my eyes, and it just like hurts so much. It's so noisy and just the most uncomfortable feeling ever. And the pilot's just pissing themselves laughing, going, gotcha! And that's their classic joke that they do to everyone, I think. That's their initiation.
I was in Vanuatu and we were on this tiny island of Pentecost, and there was a plane taking off. And I thought it'd be funny to get behind it because it was a small airplane. And the exact same thing happened to me. Like, just got sprayed with all this dust, and yeah. It was horrible.
Yeah, it's not good, is it?
No.
No. It sounds like it could be fun, but it's not. Trust me.
No, not at all.
That was my basic living, and I had another story which I was going to say.
About wakeboarding, about the pilots, socialising with the team?
Sorry, about wakeboarding. So another day we just got back from wakeboarding, right? And we'd just been wakeboarding, having lots of fun, and then we pulled up to the jetty, the pier. If you watch episode 19, I believe, you'll be able to see what a jetty is. And I pulled up and I took off my wakeboard, and my mate was there fishing. And just as I got off, there was this massive shark which was just swimming around the jetty where he was fishing. I'm like, wow, that was pretty close. So I shit myself a little bit there, but
I'd assume they'd be well-fed sharks there.
well, that's what I think so as well. But I think there was like a bronze whaler or something like that. They're quite aggressive sharks, so
Yeah.
they might give you a bite.
Yep.
They probably don't want to eat you, but they're probably happy to bite you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he was fishing, and so I'm like, oh, I'll just sit here and talk to him, because he was one of my porter mates that I used to work with.
Yep.
And he was fishing. He was a big guy as well. Like he was traveling around Australia in his car, and he'd stopped off here for a bit of seasonal work. And I helped him fishing, and he had a line. Like, he didn't have a rod, he just had a line in his hand.
Yeah.
And he pulled in this this massive fish, right?
Yeah.
And then he filleted it on the jetty,
Yeah.
and he gave me like there was a beautiful rainbow cod or something like that, just a beautiful fish, and he gave me a big heaps of it, and I just took a massive bite out of it as it was, like a sashimi,
Yeah.
and it was really good. But then he threw the carcass into the water, and this massive shark just came up and went and grabbed it.
Wow.
I'm like, oh, and so he threw in the reel and to go fishing more because there's probably lots of fish around, but he actually caught the shark, and it was on the line, and he's like, I'm not much of a fisherman, but you have to tire out the fish, and like he was letting it off, and it was going dun dun dun. The line was just coming out, and his hands were like bleeding because it was just slicing his hands. He's like, Joe, I can't do this anymore, man. My hands are gone. And he was like a big tough guy as well, and like a farmer type of guy, like just
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm like, all right. And so I grabbed onto it, and not being a very good fisherman, I just thought, okay, so it's just tug of war, is it? And so I'm kind of like pulling, and I pulled, and I'm like, yeah, I can pull tougher than this shark. And so I pulled it, and it snapped the line, and the shark got away. So I thought he was going to be pissed off, but he wasn't really. I think he'd caught his good fish, and you know.
Hey, so was your car parked on the mainland all this time?
Yeah, so I had my car in long-term parking,
Yeah.
which they have on the mainland, and it was funny, my roommate, he actually worked for the ferry. There was a ferry which went from Airlie Beach, which is the main party and party place of the Whitsundays, and it's the place where everyone leaves to go to the islands. And he worked on the main ferry, which would take people across. So
Is Shute Harbour in Airlie Beach?
that's right, yeah, that's the harbour.
Yeah, okay.
He would be able to go over to the mainland for free on the boat. And because I work for the aviation, I would be able to fly over for free.
Yeah.
But I would land in the airport, but he would, I'll just give you some context here. The shopping over there was really expensive on the island.
Yeah.
It was inflated prices because they got to ship everything in, and they didn't have much. So if you could do your shopping on the mainland, you'd save a lot of money. You could get a lot better produce.
Yeah.
So he would catch the boat over, and I would fly over in like a Cessna, in like a 12-seater plane or something like that, and for free.
Yeah.
So that was pretty awesome. But the car park was at Shute Harbour, where so he'd jump in my car,
Yeah.
and he'd drive to the airport, and then we'd go shopping together. I would usually go back with him on the boat. If there wasn't a plane, he could get me on. And yeah, we'd just do our shopping that way. But that was pretty cool, going, and if I went by myself, I'd just fly over, and I'd get someone to give me a lift down to the harbour. But it was a pretty cool experience doing your shopping in a plane.
Yeah.
That's not something everyone gets to say, do they?
Did you ever take all your shopping bags back on the plane?
I did, yeah, a couple of times, but it wasn't very convenient because I had to get back to the airport somehow. So if like one of the pilots was going there, I would.
Yeah.
And they had their car there, or because I had a mate, that one of the pilots, and he owned a place in Bowen, and Bowen's famous for their mangoes, and he had like an old mango farm, and he had the most amazing mangoes that were like the size of your head, and they were just so juicy, and he used to give them to me for free. And
How far is it from Bowen to Airlie Beach?
a couple of hours. So one day there wasn't that much to do there, so one day we decided let's go to the movie theatres, and there was a movie theatres in Bowen like a classic old one that's like over 100 years old. Just beautiful old cinema. And I think we caught the boat over. I drove and we got to the movies. We watched the movie. As soon as it finished, we had to go back and jump on the last boat back.
Yeah.
But it was that's because it's about, maybe 2 hours, I think.
Yeah, wow.
But yeah, that was my experience in island life.
I know we're running out of time, but just before we go, I just want to talk about the people. Like, I think I had a conversation with you before about how you were saving money, but not everyone was quite as diligent.
No, so we were like everyone was partying over there. That's why a lot of people were young. I was young as well, but I had something to save for. But most people would just go out drinking every night and spend all their money that way. And like my roommate, for example, he'd just every payday he'd go buy a carton of beer, and but he'd spend it all on alcohol. And I remember one night they were all out partying and they saw Richard Branson, because Richard Branson actually owns, I think, does he own an island? Oh, he owns...
I know he owns islands. I don't know which ones he owns.
Yeah, so he was there, right, and he was doing like party tricks with my mate, and he stole my mate's watch without him even knowing. And he's like, oh, you're missing this, mate? And he held up the watch and he's like, what, how'd you steal that? So yeah, he used to come out and party, and but I was in my room watching television or playing Xbox or something, trying to save money. And I've got a beeping again.
Blowy,
Kama, can you hear me?
I have to call him back.
No, I've lost Kama, and we're just gonna have to call him back here. This is what we do on the Kama and Blowy podcast. You there, Kama?
Yeah, how you going?
Yeah, good, mate.
It's Kama, your brother.
Oh, hey, Kama. I'm just doing a podcast with you. Would you like to join?
Yeah, we're just finishing actually.
Oh, well, that's good timing, because I was just finishing as well.
Yeah. Okay, well, we know what to do.
And just a reminder to everyone that you can get this podcast on, you can get it as a podcast. It's not just a video. So if you don't have time to watch these videos, you can always listen to it on your favorite podcast app of your choice. And on that note, Kama?
Well, wait, before that, I'd like to remind people as well just to leave comments in the comment section and like the video, and also give us a rating on iTunes or whatever your podcast app is, because it does help us become more visible. So that would be cool.
Oh, that would be lovely. And look, we do get some lovely comments and we respond to all of them, and it makes us feel warm inside. So thank you. Kama, I've got a new finish for this episode. I reckon we're going to have to snap kick the camera.
I've got it on the pram, Joe. It's Blowy, it's going to be hard.
No, you just take a step back and then just do a side kick.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
G'day, I'm Kama. And I'm Blowy.
It's a Kama and Blowy Show.
Kama and Blowy.